Hi, I'm Deborah Gilbreath, and I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. I have had victory over drugs and alcohol since September the 5th of 1995. And in less than 3 weeks, that's going to be 23 years. I'm going to go over my testimony with y'all. This is a repeat. Uh, I was born the oldest of four siblings in a suburb in Dallas County. My parents were Christians when they married and during my early years. My dad's family lived in the Dallas area, and we spent a lot of time with them the first 3 years of my life. His mother was a devout Christian, and she was very loving and kind. She always told me God loved me. She took time to show me her flower beds and her chickens in the backyard. She encouraged me to love the Bible and to read it and to live by it. She taught me to avoid watching evil things on the television set. Proverbs 22, verse 6 says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." After my siblings were born, when I was about 4 years old, adversity really struck our home. As a matter of fact, lightning actually struck our home at that time, and the neighbors said fireballs were rolling off our roof. My parents stopped taking us to church and started fighting a lot. Mother started making trips to the mental hospital, and relatives cared for us while she was there when I was in the first grade. I became depressed at that time. I stayed depressed until the fourth grade when I became angry. My parents were drinking a lot and fighting a lot and frequently threatening to get a divorce. Financial hardship kept us in the house most of the time watching TV and learning all that the media has to teach. I was a lonely, timid, and resentful child. I went to vacation Bible school at the local church where I could walk after the fourth grade, and I was saved and baptized at the same time as my sister. It was a wonderful evening, and I will never forget the feeling of truly belonging to the Lord and being loved by the Lord and the body of Christ. My dad's mother and two of his sisters had attended the ceremony. They seemed to think it was a very important occasion. There had been a rift between my dad's family and my mother over the alcohol in our lives. Baptist preachers all preached that drinking was a sin in those days, and half of my dad's family would not associate with drinkers. The other half drank alcoholically when they drank. I went to vacation Bible. Okay, by the time I was in high school, I had a boyfriend and we were planning to get married someday. He gave me a ring that he had stolen when all the rings were dropped on the floor at a jewelry store where he was. I should have told him to go back and drop the ring on the floor there again, but I turned away from the Lord and kept the ring. We broke up soon, but not until we had become as intimate as you could be without actually losing virginity. That was my first addictive experience. I craved the attention of that boyfriend so badly, and the intimate attention. I tried hanging out with his friends to try to find out about him after the breakup. They were all smoking cigarettes, so I started smoking to have an excuse to go over to where they were. I remember thinking that I should probably not do that because I would be addicted. I had hated my dad's addictions to alcohol and cigarettes because it took away money that we needed for food and our other needs. I was totally despondent about the breakup, and I was angry with my mother about the responsibilities I had in the home. So I ran away from home and told the people at the jail I lived in an abusive environment. That was a stretch. I was placed at the Children's Emergency Shelter in Dallas. From there, I went to the Presbyterian Children's Home in Itasca, Texas, and I became close to the Lord again while I was there. I talked with him daily and went to church on Sundays. I was bitten with the boy crazy bug, though. I went with one boy, flirted with another, dropped a good guy for an abusive one, then dated a boy only to get cigarettes and go to the movies. It seemed like my heart could not feel love at all. I was afraid of people too. I had grown up in situations that did not foster good social skills or confidence. I was very hungry for the approval of others. All that ended when I decided to smoke marijuana with the other girls and got caught. I ran away again, a habit I would repeat all throughout my life when the going got rough. I had to start using people for food, shelter, and transportation at that time of my life. I had turned my back on the Lord, and I was ashamed to talk to Him anymore. Soon I had lost my virginity and become a dancer in a Dallas nightclub. I hated myself on the inside because of ruining my life at the children's home. I did not like the men at the club either. If I dated any of them, I treated them badly. One of those men married me, and I tried to straighten up and live a somewhat normal life. My nerves were bad, and I needed to smoke marijuana every day, several times, just to keep my nerves in check. I also became a romance and love addict at that time. I snorted speed any time that I could get it. I had done a lot of that at the dance club because I was unable to control myself when I was drinking. I would not work after I married, but my husband did not mind. He was very controlling and critical of me, and I let him get away with it. I responded by acting as if I had a modeling job. I always exercised starved, kept my makeup perfect, and tried to get the attention of other men. Proverbs 11 verse 22 says, like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman without discretion. I was so insecure and had so much social anxiety that I would have an asthma attack or a coughing spasm in social situations that I could not escape. That happened to me at a training session for nurses aid and at a law firm where I was a file clerk. I thought other people were better than me, and I hated them for it. I really wanted to matter, and I thought that academic achievement would prove that I did. I decided to go to college and get a career. I ended up going to nursing school. We had a son just as I graduated. During nursing school, I became an atheist when I saw things that made me question God. I remained an atheist for 14 years during my career as an ICU emergency room nurse. Nursing was a tough profession, and I needed to get high every day right when I got off work. I was not going to work high, though. I hated myself for being too weak to quit smoking cigarettes or to leave the marijuana alone. I hated my husband for his addictive behaviors as well. Our relationship was pretty much physical. I was not doing anything to feed the relationship, and it was not growing. I started having extramarital affairs at college and several over the years. I ended up having an abortion as the result of one of them, and this caused me much shame and grief later on in my life. At that time, I did not even consider it to be a life. But now I know that God plans all lives. Jeremiah 1 verse 5 reads, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. So incidentally, I've had to apologize to God and to my baby in heaven for that abortion before I could get free from it. At that time, I was as far away from God as you can wonder. I was very lonely all the time. My husband and I did not talk to each other, and he was gone a lot. We moved to the country outside of Terrell, Texas in 1988, and I had a large yard there. I could smoke marijuana on the porch, and I thought it was a little bit of heaven. I started working in the yard and making flower beds, and all the neighbors gave me compliments. I really liked that a lot. I started rewarding myself for my yard work by drinking beers, and pretty soon I had flower beds all over the yard, and I was drinking beer every day. Then I hurt my back at the hospital where I worked and had to have a spinal fusion on my lower spine in 1993. I was drinking a lot of beer during the months before surgery, and I was insanely drunk when I went in for surgery. I was out of control with the drinking pretty quickly, and I had not started till I was 37 years old. By the time I was 39 years old, I was drinking all day and all night, every day, and I was hallucinating. Proverbs 23, verses 29 through 35 says, "Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? Who has complaints? Who has needless bruises? Who has bloodshot eyes? Those who linger over the wine, who go to sample bowls of mixed wine. Do not gaze at the wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it goes down smoothly. In the end, it bites like a snake and poisons like a viper. Your eyes will see strange sights. Your mind will imagine confusing things. You will be like one sleeping on the high seas, lying on top of the rigging. They hit me, you will say, but I am not hurt. They beat me, but I don't feel it. When will I wake up so I can get another drink?" That's what the Bible says. I became despondent and did not want to live. I knew I was killing myself with the drinking, and I thought it would be great when the lights went out and I was not aware of anything anymore. My hallucinations got more intense, and it occurred to me that it might be a spiritual phenomenon, and I might really have a soul. Then I realized that I was about to die in a very bad spiritual condition. This scared me pretty badly, and I decided I had better call on Jesus to help me get out of this mess. I was afraid that he might not answer me after all these years of apostasy. He did answer me, and he gave me a peace that night that meant I did not have to drink anymore. The next day, the nurses pushed me into Alcoholics Anonymous for 3 years. There I formed habits that have helped me a lot in not drinking. I formed the habit of wanting instant gratification over the other years of my life through chain smoking cigarettes, practicing sex addiction, taking it taking drugs, and drinking alcohol to excess. This was still with me in my recovery process. Most of it, the moving the addiction around was, but I moved it around from sex to rage to shopping to internet addiction to overeating. My addiction seemed to be like a string of Christmas lights that blinked first in one area and then in another. I tackled one problem at a time, one step at a time, while I practiced assorted spiritual practices and had a very tentative and distant relationship with my higher power during those years. I survived that way for 8 years, then the bottom fell out. My ex-husband told me that he was divorcing me. He had been an idol in my life. My response was to have an immediate mental breakdown so that I thought he was not really my husband telling me that. He moved out and left everything there, including his tools, his golf clubs, his clothes, and everything else. Isaiah 66 verse 4 says, "I also will choose their delusions. I will bring their fears upon them. Because when I called, none did answer. When I spoke, they did not hear. But they did evil before my eyes and chose that in which I do not delight." I was not praying, even though I called on Jesus, I wasn't praying to him or reading my Bible, attending church. I just forgot all about it, really, once he saved me from the drinking. I decompensated mentally and ended up losing my RN license due to mental problems and going to jail for breaking all the windows out of my mother's house. I thought she was an imposter too. I was completely delusional in sobriety at that point. I was transferred back and forth from jail to the mental hospital between the years of 2007 and 2010. When I got out, I still had the idea that I would get my ex-husband back and take up my sex and love addiction and selfish living again. God had other ideas for my life. I had turned to God in earnest in 2009 while I was locked up and started reading my Bible every day. I had a deep and grieving heartache over the divorce, even though I had endured a loveless marriage and a godless life. When I left the hospital, I came to live with my mother and take care of her in 2010, and this was a full-time job. We went to her church together where she and the ladies had been praying for me while I was in the mental hospital. I loved the church and soon felt the call of the Lord to ministry. Psalm 103 verses 1 through 4 says, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all your iniquities, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from destruction, who crowns you with loving kindness and tender mercies." I asked the senior pastor at the church to ordain me as a minister, but he explained that their church did not ordain women. So I got an online ordination. I started attending Liberty University online as well, while dreaming of repairing my marriage. All this was somewhat delusional because my ex-husband had been living with another woman since 2009. I started attending Overcomers Anonymous at my church for grief and weight problems. We only had 3 members, and every time we had a newcomer, they went away to go to Celebrate Recovery instead. Finally, I came to Celebrate Recovery in 2012 to see how were they stealing all our newcomers. I fell in love with the Celebrate Recovery experience that night. I could not believe that they were so loving and kind. They served food and had a live band. It was really amazing to me, so they stole me that night as well. I started attending Celebrate Recovery, but I kept going to my own church. But my own church discouraged any admission of addiction of any type or any kind of problem with any self-control. I developed a large group of friends at Celebrate Recovery, and they all went to church there where the Celebrate Recovery meeting was held. So in 2015, I moved my membership over to that church for a fellowship with my recovery friends there. I had not ever had any friends in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I never bonded with anyone in that program until 2011 when I did make friends with an AA sponsor who has helped me quite a bit. In 2013, I started a Celebrate Recovery Step Study for my weight problem. I thought I knew one of the members from the class from AA, and she had known my ex-husband when we were married. It hurt my heart to remember it all. I knew that I should deal with grief about the divorce at that time. I went through all the steps and had a wonderful experience after my inventory and confession session. I could really feel the nearness of the Lord Jesus with me at that time, and I felt free from the marriage at that point. My grief about it did keep creeping back in and out of my life until I was recently doing some inventory about my addictive behavior in the past and how it affected the other people in my life. I looked at the truth about my marriage. I asked myself, what did I do besides get high and look good? The answer was not much. My ex was very controlling and he wanted to do a lot of things himself, so I always let him. I asked myself, what did my husband do in the marriage? So I wrote it down. The list was very surprising to me when I saw it on paper. I had receded into my addiction completely and was not doing anything in the home or marriage to nurture my home, my family, or my relationships with them. In Celebrate Recovery, I have learned to look at my part in situations. I have learned how to truly love other people and to care for them as well as to serve them. I have learned how to have self-love, self-control, and self-respect. I've also learned how to do all those things that my ex-husband was doing for me, and all my addictions have been taken care of by the power of Jesus Christ, who is at the center of my life today and is at the center of the Celebrate Recovery program. Jesus guided me when I was blinded by character defects that had not been removed yet. He lifted me up when I was weak and gave me strength. He forgives me every day because every day I make some mistakes. He restored me in many areas where I was unsuccessful in life. I no longer have to have instant gratification, and I no longer act on impulse or anger, except sometimes in traffic. I love my Celebrate Recovery family and my church, and I look forward to meeting and worship service every week. I am blessed with godly women mentoring me, and I am mentoring other women in recovery. This makes my life full and happy. I have attended seminary college and have half a master's of divinity degree now. I want to finish it soon. I currently do a Bible lesson each week on YouTube and Facebook video. God recently put some Miracle Grow on my spiritual development and sent me 3 grandsons to care for, ages 7, 10, and 13. That got me moving around pretty quickly. I presently am working out in the gym and developing healthy eating habits. My emotions are no longer ruling my behavior thanks to the Celebrate Recovery steps and program. I am soothed and balanced each evening during my regular prayer times, which I truly look forward to each day. Today I have my identity in Jesus Christ as God's child, as a member of the royal priesthood, and as an heir to God's kingdom. In my recovery walk, I'm currently working on emotional balance, emotional stability, and emotional control. Proverbs 16:32 says, he that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that rules his spirit is better than he that takes a city. So, God has brought many changes to my heart, my spirit, and my life. I went from an unhappy life of pride, selfishness, ambition, and conceit to an abundant life in Jesus Christ and His church that brings me peace and joy each day and gives me a reason to be glad to get up each morning. Thank you for letting me share my testimony.